Stardom Situm Show presented by Bridgestone Tires. It is week 8. We're almost halfway through the NFL regular season, and that means halfway through getting you closer to a fantasy championship. My name's Kimmy Shex. This guy is Adam Rank. That guy over there is Michael F. Florio. The F is for floral. He's always rocking some florals. And this is the Stardom Situm Show presented by Bridgestone Tires. We are going to go through our favorite starts and sits of the week, especially our Club Dub players. That's at the end. But if you want to check out Adam Rank's full list of starts and sits, just head over to NFL.com/starts and sits. Let's kick this thing off talking about some Stardom quarterbacks for week 8. Rank, can you take us through your Stardom board?
Certainly. There's a lot of good quarterback matchups this week, starting off with Kirk Cousins, Daniel Jones, Trevor Lawrence. Really good matchup against the Seattle Seahawks this week. Jameis Winston going up against that banged-up Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Revenge.
A little bit of a revenge game. And I think Joe Burrow has kind of established himself as a quarterback that you're going to probably be starting each and every week. Even though the FPA, the fantasy points against, would tell you not to start Joe Burrow, don't read too much into that stuff. And, of course, some of the other sits, like Tua, we're not going to start this week, and Jimmy Garoppolo.
You guys were hot on Tua last week. I remember we got into a debate.
And he threw 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, I know. You guys were right about that.
He played well.
He played well.
Not a great match.
A guy on that list was Kirk Cousins, and you like him as a start, so tell us why.
I really like Kirk Cousins, and coming into the season, he was a player that I really thought highly of, because last year, when you looked at it, he had 8 games where he threw at least 3 touchdown passes. And I thought, again, coming into this year, the Vikings fans were convinced they had the best roster in the entire NFL, which is hilarious. But I'm like, no. They're going to be in these games where they're going to be in shootouts again, and they're going to have to throw the football probably more than Mike Zimmer would like to, and that's what we've seen. As you see right there, he's averaging over 20 fantasy points per game this season. That's 10th amongst quarterback. And that's also in leagues where you get just 4 points for passing touchdowns. In leagues where you play with bonuses and everything, Kirk Cousins has been a lot better. So this week, I don't care what the matchup is. Kirk Cousins, who I kept through a bye week, is my starting quarterback.
Someone tweeted me that if their kicker made all of their kicks, Kirk Cousins would be in the MVP discussion. And it's kind of hard to disagree with the way he's been playing so far.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of true.
And there are 3 losses on the season, because I think people probably look at the wins and losses for the Vikings this season. They're 3-3. Those 3 losses, it's a combined 11 points. So, like you said, maybe if their kicker actually could kick the field goals, Kirk Cousins could be in that MVP conversation.
But he's not, and they're not.
Yes. Okay, that part right
They
there.
have as many wins as the Bears right now.
What about a quarterback you want to sit this week, Adam Rank?
Well, we're going to have to sit Mac Jones this week, who I thought played very well last week. And here's the thing with rookie quarterbacks. Not everybody can be Justin Herbert. Okay, let's go ahead and say that. But there's going to be weeks where Mac is going to be really good. We thought last week that it was a good start going up against the New York Jets there, even though the FPA said not to. But, you know, he's a matchup-based guy, which I don't think is the worst thing in the world for guys, you know, in their first year in the league. I don't like the matchup this week against the LA Chargers because the LA Chargers are very generous against opposing running backs. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on during the show. So I think this is a start your Patriots running back situation, not start their quarterback.
I think the Chargers are going to want to get a little revenge after what happened to Justin Herbert. Their rookie quarterback last year, worst game of the year, came against the Patriots. So I think they've been on this bye week wanting to get back at Mac Jones now.
And even with Brandon Staley not being a part of the coaching staff last year, I still believe that's the case because it's like, that's his quarterback. He was, you know, he knows, he's aware of what happened. So I think he will be out there helping the Chargers get a little revenge.
Revenge. We got a lot of revenge action last week, this week, all of the revenges.
All over the place.
But Florio, I want to go to you because a guy who was on a Rank's Stardom list was none other than Trevor Lawrence, who's taking on the Seattle Seahawks. So do we agree that we're starting Trevor Lawrence this week?
Yeah, I think you can start Trevor Lawrence this week. Obviously not if you have one of the elite quarterbacks, but other than that, I think he's in play. He's got a really good matchup, and he's been playing well as of late. He's got over 20 rushing yards in 4 of his last 5 games, which I think is going a little under the radar. He can add points with his legs, rushing touchdowns in 2 of the last 3. The passing yards have been up as of late. It's just the passing touchdowns haven't been there. But in a favorable matchup against Seattle, I think that could change.
Yeah, 100%. I think this is, again, with these rookies, you know, it's not like last year, but with these rookies, these guys are just matchup-based guys, and I think this is a perfect opportunity to play Trevor Lawrence, especially if you have like Lamar Jackson or something.
Coming off the bye, usually you see a rookie feel a little bit more comfortable after that.
Yeah.
Okay, question. I got a YOLO league. I have Jameis Winston and Trevor Lawrence. Both of those guys are on the stardom list. So which one should I actually start this week?
Yeah, go for it.
Which one?
Start one of them.
Which one?
Start one of them.
God, you guys
Trevor
are horrible.
Lawrence.
Tweet me who you think I should start. I think Jameis.
I have Lawrence ahead of Winston, but I don't.
You do?
But I wouldn't make enough of an argument against either one.
Okay.
I believe I have them 13 and 14.
I think I might have them exactly at that.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
so
I'll figure it out. You guys tweet me.
No,
what
but
you
it's
think.
like in situations like that, it's not. There's nothing wrong with going with a player that you're more comfortable with.
I just think Jameis in a revenge moment.
love it. I
in
love
the
Jameis.
Superdome in New Orleans against his former team.
I love everything about that. There's nothing wrong with that start.
All right, well, I have until
trust your
Sunday.
gut sometimes.
I have until Sunday to figure it out.
There you go.
All right, let's go ahead and take a look at our Stardom wide receiver board. Adam Rank.
A lot of receivers that were, starting this week. There's a lot of these guys that I really like. Week in and week out, it's always interesting for me to always try to figure out who are we not starting. Tyler Boyd was a tough one for me, although it always seems to be I pick one guy to sit who just goes and blows up the entire situation, and that's fine. But I think with guys like Courtland Sutton, I think Emmanuel Sanders kind of gets overlooked as well. I think Emmanuel Sanders has an opportunity for a really big game this week.
I have him as one of my favorite flex starts, but I think he should be
Oh.
considered a must-start wide receiver on a week-to-week basis because of what's happening in Buffalo between him
agree.
and Josh Allen.
I agree.
But
Go
Michael
Bills.
Pittman was on. Yes, go Bills. Michael Pittman was on your Stardom list. So how do you think he'll do against the Titans?
Well, since week 2, he has been one of the best wide receivers in all of fantasy football, and I think that you need to go out and make sure that he's in your lineup each and every week. One of the things that we really like about him is his ability to go and catch the football, go up and get it, and make those Randy Moss-type catches. Not afraid of a little contact, not afraid of going up and getting a little bit dirty. Of course, his dad played in the NFL, so he grew up, probably watching his dad and, also watching Randy Moss. So I really love just the way that he plays right there, calling for the ball, fighting through
That was
a cornerback.
underthrown a bit.
Yeah, it was underthrown. The cornerback grabbed his arm. And you see some of these other names, Devonta Smith, T. Higgins, Robert Woods, guys who I like. I would be starting Michael Pittman over him.
I think Michael Pittman has reached must-start status, at least in a matchup this good. The Titans allow the most fantasy points to wide receivers. I am super excited for Michael Pittman. I'm starting him everywhere I have him.
Rank, you just said you would start Michael Pittman over Devonta Smith, who's facing the
Right.
Lions this week. Did I hear that correctly?
That is correct. I like Michael Pittman better. I like Devonta Smith. He's one of my starts this week. I think he's got a great opportunity against the Detroit Lions, who give up a lot of production to opposing everybody. I also think, too, Detroit's probably going to be leading this game. I really do believe in Detroit.
You think they get their
I
first
think
win this season?
I do. I'm picking Detroit to win this game. And all the production that we see from the Eagles generally happens in the fourth quarter.
Yep.
When they're losing by a ton. You'll be sitting there, when you have Jalen Hurts, you're sitting there, you're like, oh my God, he has 3 points. It's the third quarter. And
You
then
know
all
you're
of a
gonna
sudden,
get over
at the end of the
20.
game, you got 25. You're like, okay, this is fine. This is cool. You don't want to. You just want to see the result. You don't want to, wait for it. You know,
Right.
when you go to Giordano's or something. Although I shouldn't say that because they don't sponsor the show. But when you get a deep dish pizza and you got to wait for 45 minutes for it to come to your table, that's excruciating.
But then once you get
Once
it,
you get it, it's
pays off.
delicious. Yeah. By the way, that as a Chicago thing, that's only the tourists order that. By the way.
What, tourists don't order deep dish? Or they
That's
do?
the only people who do. It's like Thanksgiving dinner. It's good for once a year.
And
that's
that's
it.
it. Any hot take Chicago fans out there who like deep dish, make sure you tweet him and tell him your takes.
I'll
But
get no
Florio, I want to
tweets.
ask you about T. Higgins. The Bengals are going to New York to face the Jets. We know that Jamar Chase is red hot this season. He's the clear #1 for Joe Burrow. But do we still feel comfortable starting T. Higgins?
I necessarily don't.
Oh, my
Oh, it was
God.
on Rick's
What is-
stardom list,
I
though.
have T. Higgins on a lot of teams because I thought he was a breakout candidate this year. But the emergence of Jamar Chase has been hurting
Right.
T. Higgins. I know he had 15 targets last week,
Yeah.
but he turned it into 13 fantasy points because
Which is
the
good.
air yards are down dramatically. He's kind of become this year's Juju Smith-Schuster, in my opinion, which is more of a safe floor guy. But against the Jets this week, I don't think they're going to have to throw as much as they had to last week against Baltimore. So if those 15 targets become more like 8, 9, even 10, which is a good game, are we looking at more like a 8-point fantasy day? So I think you start him if you have to, but I would try to get away from him if you're able to.
I agree, because what really concerns me about T. Higgins is that he has a larger target share than Ja'Marr Chase. He has more end zone targets than Ja'Marr Chase. I'm sorry, what was the question? What are we talking about here?
Ja'Marr Chase has all the fantasy points, though.
I understand currently, but I think that over the entirety of the season, those things start to even out. When somebody is dominating in target share, when somebody is being looked at near the end zone, eventually those points will happen. I know those 13-point games. That's I love that floor. That's what I want from my wide receiver 3, which I think what T. Higgins is. I'm not saying to bench Ja'Marr Chase, but I think T. Higgins gives you enough production to be able to start.
The one wide receiver for the Bengals that I feel comfortable leaving on the bench, though, is Tyler Boyd. I think
he's on my sit-em list. So number 1, he's going to have 30 points this week. Number 2, I've had to put him in a lot of DFS lineups. Well, hypothetically, the ones that we do for the show, because we can't do them for real. But you know what I'm saying? Like, but T. Higgins, because he's a great value this week.
All right.
Or, no, Tyler Boyd.
Tyler Boyd. It's time for us to take a very quick break, but when we come back, we're going to chat tight ends. Which one are in their starting lineups, and which tight ends will have to ride it from the bench? We'll be right back. The Start 'em Sit 'em Show, presented by Bridgestone Tires. Welcome back in, guys. It's now time for our Prepared to Perform segment, presented by Bridgestone Tires. Adam Rank, talk us through the tight ends.
CJ Uzomah, pretty close to a must start. I'm starting so many Bengals. I really should. You know what? And it's going to be their RB1's going to end up having 30 points because their RB1 dominates bad teams. That's the only time he shows up. Dallas Goedert, now the #1 guy for the Philadelphia Eagles, now that Zach Ertz is gone. Mike Gesicki. I need to stop putting him on this list because I think it's pretty evident that
he's
each
a must start.
He has to start.
Pretty obvious.
He's part of. I don't know that he's necessarily part of that crew with Kelsey,
the Cinco,
the Cinco, Waller, Mark Andrews, and Kittle, and those guys. But he's like a Jace. Like he's friends with them. Like he hangs out with them in between the break between second and third period. But he doesn't have lunch with them. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Sounds personal. Sounds like you may have been a part of that group as well.
I was the adjacent to the popular kids.
I could tell. I could tell by that one.
Popular
Let's talk about Tyler Higbee.
Let's talk about Tyler
at the
Higbee.
Houston Texans.
I think Tyler Higbee is a fantastic start this week. You know why? He's going up against the Houston Texans. Don't we start all of our tight ends against the Houston Texans?
Basically.
I start everybody against the Texans.
And it's at the epicenter. The epicenter of that helps no one. Where rando tight ends score touchdowns each and every week. And I'm not going to say that Tyler Higbee is some random tight end, but I think to the lay folk, to the I don't want to say casuals because that has a negative connotation, but like Tyler Higbee's not Cooper Kupp. Like he's not the headliner. Like if you're going to see Rancid and Dropkick Murphys and you're like, well, I'm going to go see the Bronx too. Like, okay, you're a hardcore fan. We get it. That's who Tyler Higbee is. But I think that this is the perfect week to start him.
He's the opening act, but he has a very safe floor.
It's a good opening
and
act.
he could score a touchdown easily this week.
Absolutely.
Just like T. Higgins, really safe floor, right, Florio?
He's the opening act for Jamar Chase.
Oh, okay, there we go. Florio, Ricky Seals-Jones, he's going up against the Denver Broncos. Is he a start or a sit for you this week?
I think he's a start, and I don't know why Adam Rank hates Ricky Seals-Jones.
I don't hate Ricky Seals-Jones.
He's a sit each week, it
I'm
seems.
never saying that.
But
I was saying pick up Ricky Seals-Jones.
I understand it's a tough matchup here against Denver, but when it comes to tight ends, I don't just like the matchup doesn't always matter to me because we have so few tight ends that see weekly volume, and Ricky Seals-Jones is one of them. He's played every snap but one the last 3 weeks. He has at least 6 targets in all 3 of the last games, and he scored 9, 11, and 16 fantasy points. So he brings a safe floor, a little bit of upside. I know it's a tough matchup, but other tight ends get like 4 targets a game. Ricky Seals-Jones is going to get more than that.
So you're starting him over Gesicki?
No.
Gesicki.
He's in my top 12, but Gesicki's in my top 5.
Are you starting him over C.J. Uzomah?
Yes.
Are you starting him over T.J. Hawkinson, who's been questionable and banged up?
He gets too much volume. Uzomah is great, but he gets like 3 targets a game. So if he doesn't get that long touchdown, you're looking at like 2 points maybe.
Are you starting him over Tommy Sweeney?
I want no interest in Tommy Sweeney. I think it's going to be Gabe Davis getting more work than it is Sweeney.
How dare you? I would start Seals-Jones over Sweeney, though.
I can't wait for us to figure out why the tight end position is the hardest to predict in fantasy football.
I like Ricky Seals-Jones. I think there's a lot of instances where you will play him. But I think that Michael Frank over here is like, he's better than Gronk. And I'm like, I'm not ready to make that proclamation.
Almost.
Almost.
All right, let's just go ahead and move on. Let's just go ahead and move on from the tight end drama and instead look at our start of running backs for Week 8. Rank, take us through them.
A lot of great running back options this week. James Robinson, Damian Harris. I'm going to talk about him in a minute. Darrell Henderson broke his streak of 15, or I think he had at least 15 fantasy points in every game this season until last week. But great opportunity this week against the Houston Texans. Elijah Mitchell looks like the guy that you want to start each and every week for the San Francisco 49ers. He's been great 3 out of his last 4 games. They're going to attack the Chicago Bears on the ground. Khalil Mack is out this week for the Bears, and then Mike Davis, Myles Gaskin. 2 guys, it's tough to say. Don't start these running backs. I don't know what your life is. But in a perfect world, you wouldn't have to start either one of those guys.
All right, Adam Rank, let's talk about James Robinson. An incredible matchup against the Seahawks this week.
I just really wanted to put over one of our friends in Duval County because I feel like although we've talked about Trevor Lawrence already, but I want to make sure Tony Khan's happy. And we're talking about all his Jacksonville studs outside of Adam Page and Adam Cole and guys like that. But I mean the guys who play for the Jaguars.
Right.
And Dr. Britt Baker, people like that. But James Robinson has been fantastic. And he was somebody that everybody had just kind of forgotten about because they drafted Travis Etienne, who I really liked as well. And then all of a sudden we came crawling back to James Robinson, and he's been a stud for us. As you see right there on the screen, he's averaged over 21 fantasy points per game since week 3. And love this matchup against the Seattle Seahawks. This might be the one thing that keeps Trevor Lawrence from having a truly dominant performance. But I'm hoping that Trevor Lawrence throws one of his touchdowns to James Robinson just to make it, copacetic.
The answer to who is this year's James Robinson was James Robinson.
Apparently.
He's just awesome. We were getting him in the later rounds of drafts, and he's just a top 5, top 10 running back at worst, I would say.
Yeah.
But it will be interesting to see what happens next season when Travis Etienne comes back and is healthy and how that backfield situation is going to look.
I think that James Robinson and whoever the new coach is for the Jags will find. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking. I'm joking. I do think that look at the way a lot of these teams are constructed. Let's take the Cleveland Browns, for instance, what Kevin Stefanski does with Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. I think that's the model that you would want to follow if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars next season. The Chicago Bears, they have Khalil Herbert. We'll talk about him in a moment. But with David Montgomery, everybody's like, well, let's get David Montgomery out the door. You're like, why? You've got another year of David Montgomery. Let's take that approach with those 2 running backs, especially when you have a young quarterback.
You just gave me a layup because I was going to ask you about
Oh, my gosh.
Khalil, your guy,
Yeah.
taking on the 49ers. What are you
Yeah.
predicting for him, fantasy-wise? And not just homer pick, homer
No, I mean,
stats.
we saw last week as poorly as the Bears looked against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and a team that does not allow a lot of production on the ground. Khalil Herbert went out there and had 100 rushing yards. And I think that that's exactly what's going to happen this week. I think that missing, like, of all the missteps the 49ers have made, and I know that we could debate the quarterback situation, I think getting rid of DeForest Buckner, sending him to the Colts, was like the worst thing that they have done. And I think that it's made their team very vulnerable. And now, you know, a couple of years ago, you wouldn't think of starting a rookie running back against this 49ers defense that's somewhat healthy, at least up front.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess Kinlaw is not healthy, but like that, to me, this defense is different. You got to start your players against them.
Love
Agreed.
it. Agreed?
That's it. Agreed.
He's been playing really well, too, as of late. He's getting all the volume, even last week when Damian Williams came back.
Well, they didn't even go to him.
Yeah, he was an afterthought. Herbert has stolen the job away from Williams, and I think you get him in your lineup every week until Montgomery's back.
Shout out to all the people who grabbed Khalil Herbert off of the waiver wire.
What I
Seems
like-
like that may be paying off.
It feels like I was way in front on that. And then 6 weeks, like this week on Fantasy Live, I think you even said, like, pick up Khalil Herbert. And you're like, what?
You're like, didn't I say that already?
Didn't I do that already?
Guys, everyone, give Adam Rank a round of
Thank you.
applause. He knew that Khalil Herbert was going to be
You know what?
great
I get
before the rest of us
enough
did.
stuff wrong. I just want one victory left.
All right, well, you got your victory for this show. But I want to talk about Kenneth Gainwell with you, Florio. We understand
What about me?
that the Eagles, you're out of this one. We understand that the Eagles have not had the best run game this season, but a lot of people think that Kenneth Gainwell, is going to get a lot of volume, especially with Miles Sanders banged up.
Yeah, I anticipate that exactly happening. I know Kenny Gainwell had his name in small text down there as a start. I think you start
thank
him
you.
this week against the Lions. The matchup doesn't get any better than this week. Detroit is second in fantasy points allowed to running backs. They've allowed the most touchdowns, and that's after last year allowing the most fantasy points and touchdowns to running backs. This is just a team that struggles against the running back position, and if the Eagles are in comeback mode late in the game, that bodes well for Kenny Gainwell as well, because we saw last week they're going to dump a lot of short passes to him and let him run after the catch. So I think Gainwell is a RB2 that has upside as a pass catcher.
I started him during Buy-Mageddon last week, and the dude I was playing was so mad. Like, how did you think to put in Kenny Gainwell? I'm like, you know what I do, right?
Right, you're like, I
this
do
is kind of
for
my job.
Elevate. Florio, what do you have Kenneth Gainwell ranked as this week?
He's around RB20, so a low-end RB2. I also think in that backfield, though, Boston Scott is a sleeper as like a flex option because he had more carries, actually, and more touches inside the 10-yard line, so he could score a touchdown this week, I think.
I love it. I asked about your rankings because if you enjoy rankings, go to NFL.com/rankings. Every single week, Florio makes an entire list of fantasy football rankings to help you know which guys you could plug into your lineup. So make sure you go to NFL.com rankings to check it out. Time for a very quick break, but when we come back, it's time to get crazy because we are talking our favorite starts of the week. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, everybody. It is time now for Colonel's Start of the Week. Everybody, calm down, calm down. It's Colonel's Start of the Week. I've actually got 3 of them for you. That's what I'm doing. I'm going 3, and we're going to start at the quarterback position. And let's go with Daniel Jones, who I've been trying to quit for quite some time, and yet every week he finds a way back into my fantasy lineup. It's kind of like when I go to KFC and I'm like, I'm going to be good. I can't get the mashed potatoes. I get 2 orders of them. Because you know what? It's delicious. It's what I do. And you know what? This is a delicious matchup for Daniel Jones this week. As you see right there on the screen, the Chiefs have allowed close to 25 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. That's second in the league. They're very generous to opposing signal callers. So I think that this is a safe play for Daniel Jones. Now let's look at the running back position, and I love Damien Harris this week. And I know a lot of people out there on Twitter, they're like, I'll never draft a Patriots running back. Listen, this is why I'm wearing this shirt, because I want to take victory laps over all of those people, because you're missing out on one of the best running backs in all of fantasy. Outside of a fumble against the Texans a couple of weeks ago, Damien Harris would be working on a streak of consecutive games with double-digit fantasy points. He should extend that streak to 3 games this week, going up against the LA Chargers, who've allowed a top 5 fantasy performance to running backs. And they've allowed a lot of fantasy points is what I'm trying to say. Listen, you can go and look up the exact numbers. Let's just say this. Chargers, very generous to opposing running backs. Start Damien Harris. Another guy you should start this week is Courtland Sutton. He's going up against the Washington FT, which is one of the best matchups of the entire season. It seems weird thinking that you would want to start players against the Washington FT, because coming into the season, we thought they were going to be one of the biggest and best defenses in the entire NFL, but that has not been the case. They have been very generous to opposing wide receivers and running backs and quarterbacks and pretty much anybody who plays offense. And Courtland Sutton leads the NFL in air yards. And while we're excited for Jerry Jeudy's imminent return to the NFL, I think that's actually beneficial to Courtland Sutton. So this week, make sure that he is in your lineup. It would not surprise me if he was a top 5 wide receiver this week. And those were the Colonel's Start of the Week. Kimmy, I'll see you in a flash.
Frank, I am so surprised that
Oh
you
my
get
God,
here
did
so
you see
quickly.
that? Almost knocked the chair over.
Oh my God, so dramatic. Loved your Colonel Starts of the Week. But
Thank
let's
you.
go ahead and take it to the rank, aka the crazy streets of Twitter. Let's start this one off with you, Adam. Rank wants to know Carson Wentz or Trevor Lawrence, and Daniel Jones or Ryan Tannehill. So it seems like 2 different leagues here.
Yeah, if that's 2 different leagues, I'm going to go Trevor Lawrence over Carson Wentz, and I'm going to go Daniel Jones over Ryan.
Danny
Tannehill.
Dimes.
No, not against my Chiefs. Absolutely
What am I
not.
doing? What am I
Florio,
doing?
This question for you from Michael. This is kind of nice.
There we go.
Should I start Khalil Herbert or Darrell Williams? This one's killing me. I'm not confident either team will play with a lead.
What?
But my heart says Herbert, brain says Williams. Help me out. I am so
Why
offended
does your brain say
that-
Williams?
Right, that you think the Chiefs won't play with a lead versus a Giant.
I'm going to disappoint one of you 2 here because it's a Chief and a Bear. I have them both ranked as RB2s. I still lean Darrell Williams because I trust his offense a little bit more.
That's insanity.
I think
Khalil
you
Herbert's like a
try to
top
start
10 running
both of
back.
them.
All right, well, maybe try to start both, Michael. This one coming back to you. Tater wants to know, do I put Robert Tonyan in since he plays tonight? I also have Dalton Schultz currently, but also have Gronk on the bench as well.
I love Bob Tonyan tonight. I think that's a great play. I think last time that Devontae Adams missed 2 games, Tonyan scored 4 touchdowns. Who else is catching the ball outside of Aaron Jones?
Robert Tonyan, that's who. All right, Florio, this one to you. Do I start Devontae Booker versus the Chiefs or Chase Claypool versus the Browns?
I think Booker has the safer floor, but I really like Claypool in a good matchup. I think the volume's going to be there for him. I would go with Claypool of those 2.
Agreed?
Agreed.
All right, that was taking it to the rank. Shout out to our friends on Twitter. Make sure you tweet us at NFL Fantasy, and maybe you will even get on the players of the week. We got our money guns already.
What club
We are going to
just
talk
allows
about
you
the
to
guys who we guarantee are going to
walk
put
in
up
with this?
25 plus fantasy points. Rank, who is your club dub player for week 8?
My club dub player of the week is going to be this one. A.J. Brown!
Yeah, buddy.
Whoop, whoop, whoop! Yeah, A.J. Brown. You know what? I love the way this Tennessee Titans offense is operating. We saw it a couple of weeks ago in that Monday night game. A.J. Brown started to show some signs of life, and then last week against the Kansas City Chiefs, racked up 133 yards. I think, too, this Titans offense, as fun as it is to watch Derrick Henry do it all, he's also throwing passes so he can get into the MVP conversation. Like, look, I'm a quarterback.
Love that for him.
I think at some point they need to take the pressure off Derrick Henry. Like, you're going to the playoffs. You're winning the AFC South. That's decided.
Okay.
Don't burn out Derrick Henry this early. Throw the ball. I know it's the opposite from what you see from a lot of teams. Like, maybe you should run the ball more. The Titans have to go in reverse, and I think A.J. Brown is the benefactor this time. Benefactor?
And the Chipotle is out of his system.
And the Chipotle, fully out of the system now.
Stop?
Florio, for you, Clubbed Up Player of the Week is...
My player of the week is a unicorn because it is Kyle Pitts, who has been scoring fantasy points like crazy. This has a lot of money in it. He's just been going off lately. He has over 23 fantasy points in each of his last 2 games. The targets have been up. The air yards have been up. The red zone targets have been up. He had 4 targets last week of 20-plus air yards. The first 5 games combined, he had just 1. So they're now using him like they used to use Julio Jones. So I'm very excited about Kyle Pitts this week and moving forward. I think outside Travis Kelce, you could have the discussion then, is he the next best tight end in the NFL?
Ooh.
Oh,
at least for fantasy.
That's the unicorn generational type of player. All that chatter we heard when he got drafted, but Florio loves him this week for week 8. My Clubbed Up Player of the Week is none other than Darrell Henderson taking on the Houston Texans because #Houston Texas. I know we constantly pick on this matchup, but Darrell Henderson, he's been incredible this season. 15-plus fantasy points in 5 of 6 games played. And speaking of picking on the matchups here, the Texans, they're allowing the second most rushing yards per game to running backs this season. I think that bodes well for him because I see a situation where the Rams go up early in the first half. Cooper Kupp gets all the points that Cooper Kupp gets. Matthew Stafford just dishes out the ball to him. But then they get in a situation where they're playing from a lead and the game script then switches over to favor the run, and Henderson becomes my RB1 for the week. So those were our Clubbed Up Players of the Week. Sadly, it's time for us to say goodbye. This is the end of the Stardom Stidham Show presented by Bridgestone Tires. But don't worry, you can see us yet again because on Sunday we have a show called NFL Fantasy Game Day. The show goes right up until the second of kickoff, 12 p.m. Eastern. You can catch us on NFL.com, inside the NFL app, the NFL Fantasy app, or on YouTube. Good luck, everybody, tonight. Thursday Night Football, 8 p.m. Eastern. It is the Arizona Cardinals playing host to the Packers. It'll be a tough one. Good luck in your Week 8 matchups. We'll see you guys next week.